All right, most of you might have already been on my teacher website before, so this might be some easy navigation for you. But for those that have not been to my website, basically go to the grade level that you pertain to, grade 11, 12, grade 10. On your phone, you're going to have to move it sideways. If you keep it frontwards or upwards, you won't be able to see these drop boxes. Okay, so make sure that your phone is sideways so that you can see it. But if you're accessing it from the computer, navigate through to your website. So for example, to my grade 10s, okay, you should have your notes, so lesson 1 with the homework attached to that pertaining day. Okay, but on top of that, okay, we have here is a submission box. Okay, so write in your name, your last name, your email that you use, whichever one you use, and basically that should be sent directly via to my mail. The last thing here is upload file. So if you cannot send it via just typing or a computer, it's just math homework that you'd rather show me, take a picture of it. Simply just take a picture of it, and I will receive it, I promise that. Okay, and I'll send you an email just as a receipt, as confirmation, or just message me and just ask me as well, and I can double check that as well. Okay, so that should be relatively easy to navigate through. All right, have a good day. Hello, grade 11 essential math. Welcome to my online means of teaching. I've posted quite a bit on our teacher website, so please take a look at that. One of the main things is the way I'm going to be teaching. So I'm going to be using a lot of YouTube. I'm also going to be using my website, as I mentioned before, and Instagram Live to keep you guys up to date. I'd have to double check at the time, but I think 11:30 to 12 was your time. Ask me questions, email me, whichever way you want, about the lessons and the homework itself. Okay, so I'll make sure I give you guys enough time to do the homework on top of teaching you the lessons. So I will be teaching first few lessons this week. We're going to be moving on to managing money. We're going to be talking about budgeting, and we're going to talk about how to modify that budget, what sorts of things are in the budget that you should be thinking about, especially at your age. Lots of things that you should be learning how to save money. This unit is very wordy, so I'm expecting you guys to read through the material yourself quite a bit. I might just go over a couple of the definitions or things that you might not necessarily understand or know, so I'll try to explain it and go through it. All right, so the first thing that we're going to be talking about is budgeting. Okay, knowing what a budget is, the importance of having one, regardless of what money you have. So the two takeaway points I take just from the intro is that you can basically budget with any amount of money. So if you're earning any sort of income, it's really important. Just because you have a little bit less than maybe a person that's working a career doesn't mean that you can't put money aside or understand, maybe I should spend this much on food, this much on that, whatever it is that you're budgeting for, okay? So whatever amount of money that you have, make sure that you save it up, okay? That's the really important there, okay? The reason is for the next point is you put yourself at risk, okay? So putting yourself at risk could be very, very problematic. Say you have living expenses, food expenses. You don't know exactly what your expenses are. Well, if you spend too much or spend too little, you could have a problem. Okay? So you would lose quite a bit of money if you don't have, if you're not earning that money, right? So just keep that in mind. Okay, a couple of the other points that you would have gotten in your notes that I thought were important is one, living within your income. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it simply means whatever you're earning, okay? Don't be spending or buying above your pay grade. So you know what, that flashy new TV that's $1,000. If you're only making about $2,000 a week, probably shouldn't be buying that unless you save quite a bit. But immediately buying something like that might not be a good idea, unless of course you know how much you're spending exactly. So that's definitely number one. Allocate funds to meet expenses. Okay, so number one is being able to identify. Okay, identify what your expenses are. Okay, whether that's food we talked about, whether that's housing arrangement. If you're living off rent, you should know how much you're renting. If you're, for example, going out a lot, going to movies, we call that entertainment. How much do you think you're spending in a month? Okay, you need to know those sorts of things. Reduce uncertainty and stress. Okay, kind of goes with knowing your allocation. In order to reduce that stress, you have to know exactly what you're dealing with. Okay, what sort of budget am I dealing with? Well, you need to know that. Okay, that reduces a lot of your stress. And saving. Okay, I can't stress the importance of saving. If you're able to save even 5% of whatever income you make, 10%, 15, whatever it is, try and save. Okay. The reason is you might use that money as an emergency fund. You might want to travel with that money. Whatever you choose to do with that money, you should always have some sort of saving account, savings account, or whatever it is. Save whatever you can, but know what your budget is, or know how much expenses you're paying for first. Okay, that's first and foremost thing. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is budgets. All right, what exactly does a budget mean? Okay, you might not even begin to know that. So the nice thing about it, as I'm going through this, is I expect you guys to go through your notes as well as I'm talking, just so you guys can kind of read it over and understand. I'm just simply trying to make it a little bit easier to understand. So what I'm going to do is write just a couple of bullet points, just to kind of help you out, just to give you an idea. Okay, so to me, a budget means basically the estimate of your future income and expenses. Okay, so how much you make and how much are you spending. Okay, it's almost like a financial plan for the future. Okay, but you're estimating. You're kind of saying, well, maybe I'm spending $100 a month on this, or $50 on this. Some expenses that you will know right away are probably your bills. For example, your phone bill. You pay a certain phone bill every month. That bill doesn't change quite drastically unless you're buying long distance minutes. Okay, but typically it's a consistent thing. Okay, and then you also have to think about, which we'll talk a little bit about, our unexpected bills. So it's always important, right, to keep enough money in your bills, so that you're also preparing for unexpected bills. Okay. Why do people create budgets? Well, they do it to ensure that they have enough money to afford the lifestyle that they would like. Okay. There are certain things that we want in life, but we also have to understand, can you afford it? Is it in the scope of your budget? If it's not, it's probably not something you want to buy just yet. It's probably something you'd likely save up for. Okay, you want to use your expenses to save up for it. Absolutely. There's no problem in that. Okay. On top of budgeting, you want to have also some goals. Okay. Some short-term goals, which we'll talk about, is paying off credit card bills. So if you're using credit card interest, we've talked about that before, or credit cards, you have to pay those bills off in a certain period of time. If we're talking about long term, well, you might be making a plan to pay for university, or you're looking for loans to pay for university. That could be a long-term goal. No matter what the goals you have, your budget should be flexible, okay, easily adjusted. That's necessary because your situation can change quickly. So this is kind of the unexpected part. Okay? The importance of flexibility is that your budget can change at any moment. Something that you might not necessarily like in your budget, you can change it. Don't keep it fixed. Make it flexible. The idea of unexpected things that could happen, well, one, if you're working a job and you get a promotion, well, your budget's going to change a little bit. You might be able to spend a little bit more on certain things. Or unfortunately, if you lose your job, okay, that can also take a negative effect on your budget. Maybe buying the most expensive pasta might not be a good idea. You might buy lower end pasta or lower end foods. If you do lose your job, you're not making an income right away. And the demands on your finances can also change rather quickly. Okay, such as your conditioner breaking at 35 degrees. Okay, so right, another unexpected thing. You own a house. Uh, Something breaks that's very important in your house that you need, well, right, you're gonna have to budget that in as one of your expenses. Okay, whether it's a one time or it's something that reoccurs to you. Okay, the important thing before you get started on a budget are these 2 points that you'll be able to find in your notes. Okay, number one is knowing yourself or knowing what's important to you. Okay, I might be a different person to you. I prefer, for example, to travel. I like traveling. So I have myself an account just for traveling expenses. That might not be something you like. Okay, so you really need to know what is important to you. What are your likes? Would you be willing to get that credit if you achieve a financial goal sooner, such as going on a holiday? Do you see some of your savings to purchase new items? Maybe you're a techie person or you like video games. Maybe you have an account saved when the newest game comes out. Knowing yourself is important. Okay. Other things that you have to also know about yourself is, do you like to pay off IOU and loans as soon as possible? Is it important to you to save up for the future? What do you prefer? Do you prefer taking out loans, or are you that person that likes to buy stuff outright? That differs. Okay, what type of a shopper are you? Are you a bargain hunter? Do you look for bargains, or do you look for name brand products? Do you need to have the latest or greatest thing, or what you already have is good enough? Okay, that might depend on the person you are, right? Not to judge or anything. Okay. And number two, okay, what are your financial goals? If you cannot think of a financial goal, you may have to start thinking a list of life goals that you have to discuss with someone you trust. This will aid in you setting the financial goals and set you to achieve life goals. For example, if you do like to move to a place of your own in 5 years, then a financial goal could be to save enough money for your down payments. Okay, so those are certain things that you really need to look towards. Okay. Okay, so the next part we're going to talk about is one, keep in mind when you're doing your budget, the three things that you should really keep a track of. And then the next part, which is the biggest part of this, is the actual budgeting form. Okay, what the budget form looks like. I have it actually linked onto my website, my teacher website. I can get that linked as well. It looks something like this. Okay, so we're going to talk about what's in the circle there. It gives you 5 points. We'll go more into greater detail about. But basically, it talks about net income, your monthly savings, and your expenses, your annual expenses, and a summary. Okay. So those are the things we're going to talk about today. So the three things we want to keep in track is how much money you own. Okay, so that's a very important thing to understand, or how much you earn, is because, as I said before, you need to keep track of your income. If you're, making very little income, then that's really you should really think about how much you spend. Okay, that affects how much you spend. In this case, if I'm making, quite a bit of money, then I might be able to spend a little bit more. Whereas if, I'm not making as much money, I should really be careful about how much I spend in the end. Okay, and then the last one is where you spend your money. Okay, not necessarily limiting, or how much do I spend on this and that, and I have to keep in track. Just be curious about how much you spend in certain spots. If I buy a lot of food at McDonald's, that's something to keep in track of. Okay, these three things are really important, because you can do a really good job of predicting your future and predicting your future budget. Where you're spending, how much you're spending, and how much you're actually making. Okay, it can be a good barometer. Okay, The next five things we're going to talk about are this budget form, what this exactly means per se. The first one we're going to talk about is net income. So if you take a look at your monthly budget form, okay, it gives you net income. Okay, and it gives you a weekly and annual amount of net income you make. It also has their primary and secondary income. So that could be your own personal budget. It could be the budget of someone that lives with you as well. If you work more than two jobs or more than one job, or you make another income, well, that's great. Okay, that goes to your annual amount. Keep in mind that annual is for the whole year, not just for the month. Looking at this part over here, we're looking at the whole annual amount of what you're gonna make there, regardless of whether you only work there for 6 months. You might not know that right away. So that's why it's really important. Your budget is going to change. It's going to be flexible. If you only have one primary income, then you're going to have to really adjust this budget that you have here. Okay, and then keep in mind, we also have the weekly amount that you can also record as well. How much do I make a week? Most of us work in a bi-weekly, so that's every 2 weeks we get paid. So those are things that you have to consider in a net income. So when we talk about net income, let's talk about net income first. I'm going to zoom out here for a second. When we talk about net income, okay, we're talking about your take-home pay. So we talk about gross being what you get in total. Okay, but there's a certain amount of money that you lose. Okay, you lose to taxes, you lose to the government or any other forms. You have to pay off. So your net income is actually the amount of money that you get paid. So just keep that in mind. Note that the monthly income in the budget form is net income and not gross income. So just keep that in mind. You may recall, or we've talked about before in pension plans with Mr. Falloon last year, is that your net income is what you're making. Okay, your gross income is not what you make. It's what might show up on a paycheck, but part of that actually goes to income tax, especially once you get older. That's once you get to 18, that's what you'll get. Okay. Number 2 is monthly savings. Let's talk about monthly savings first. Okay. The general rule of thumb is that you save about 10%. So let me write that on the board there. Okay, so recommended saving is about 10% of your net income. Okay, that is what you use as emergency fund to pay for debts in the future. So as we said before, it's nice to have an unexpected set of income just in case things happen. So 10% should be saved. Many financial planners suggest that to save money, you should pay yourself first. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that financial planners mean that you should set aside a certain percentage of net income as soon as you receive it and live off the remaining amounts. So like I said before, say that you're making $1,000 a week. The recommendation is that you save 10% of that thousand. So save about $100, okay, and live off the $900 that you have, rather than thinking that I need to use all this $1,000. Okay, that's the idea that you should have as your saving. Paying yourself first will provide you with financial security. You should not use the amount you set aside to buy a DVD player or take a vacation. You can use that amount to set aside and establish an emergency fund, as we talked about before. Maybe even to pay off debt or invest in your retirement. A lot of people invest in retirement quite early. It's an account that you don't want to touch until you hit a certain age. So just keep that in mind. Most financial planners recommend that you set aside, as I said, 10% of your net income. They also suggest you begin the habit of paying yourself as soon as you start earning the money. Okay. Next part is monthly expenses. So third consists of what what sort of things are you paying off for. So for example, it mentions here, okay, it mentions mortgage or rent. talks about car payments, right? Hydro, how much am I paying for hydro, for cable, for groceries, for clothing, car maintenance, all of these things, right? You have to consider are expenses, okay? So how much are you spending on those? Record those, okay? When you have a chance, record what you might already have. You might have, for example, entertainment, your phone. You might pay if you have a car. You might pay certain car payments, possibly. Those are things that you have to take into consideration here. And then you want to total your monthly expenses. How much do I make, or how much do I spend on a month on all of these things? You have to add it up. Okay. Number 4 is annual expenses. Okay. So how much am I paying for the year? Okay. So keep that in mind. So broken down here again. So annual expenses. Okay, you have car insurance, you pay that over the year, life insurance, property taxes, home insurance, vacations, newspapers, and periodicals. So if you're vacationing every single year, how much are you paying? Is there a monthly amount to that? Maybe, maybe not. If there is, also include that in your monthly contributions. Okay. And the last thing is your summary. Okay. Your summary is important here. Okay. So you have to wrap it up. You have to know exactly, okay, what your revisions are. Okay, so for example, if you wanted to rewrite the average monthly income, and also, find the sum of the savings, the total monthly expenses and total monthly contributions, subtract the sum from your average monthly income, then you know what, you're going to need a summary. Okay, you're going to need something to wrap all of this up. Okay, if the difference is positive, right, you can spend more or add more to your savings. If the difference is negative, you have a shortfall or deficit. If there is a deficit, it is necessary to examine the budget and earn more money or spend less money. Okay, so let's go through a couple of examples of what that means in the next video.